All right, we're live. Or so the computer tells me. We're up on the interwebs, Dan.
Wonderful. This is extremely exciting. I don't know.
This is exciting, and I have to give a special shout out to our good friend Alex Wilkes, one of the Garden State's leading political minds. I was going to say subcategory under 40, but I think for any category, Alex qualifies for helping us get set up with the technology today. I am, of course, for those of you that are regular Save Jersey fans or listen to me over at 1210 WPHT, I am Matt Rooney of SaveJersey.com, and we are coming to you live from Atlantic City, the Boardwalk Empire, for day one of two of the New Jersey Republican Party's statewide leadership summit. It's a mouthful, but I'll tell you what, it encapsulates that there's a lot going on down here this year, because I think it's been 5 or 6 years, Dan, we've been coming to this, and there's new energy in the party. There's new energy based upon what happened in 2021 and what we all see coming in 2022 with the red wave. So we're going to talk to a dozen and a half guests over the course of the next 36 hours who I think are going to give us some information, insight, and perspective on the red wave that's coming, and specifically what's happening on the ground in this great Garden State. Before we get started, quick introduction. My main man, my partner in crime, he is a political blogger. He is a prognosticator. He also has a Broadway blog, which makes him a tad unique. The one, the only Dan Cerrucci.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure to be here as always. Very exciting.
We didn't have to drive too far to get here, Dan, but we're together again.
That's what I love about the thing I love most of all is having all of these Republicans come to South Jersey.
Yes. Yes, and our first guest had quite a bit of a drive. But I want to say before I forget, we've got 3 sponsors for our live cast this weekend. First and foremost, our friends at Affordable Energy for New Jersey, fighting for an energy plan in New Jersey which actually makes sense, doesn't levy onerous taxes on the people of New Jersey for unproven technologies. They're fighting for a future that's powered by logic. We also want to thank our friends Garden State Initiative. That's really New Jersey's leading organization fighting for common sense, candidly, in budgeting, and also providing a fresh perspective at how we look at how our money's actually spent once it gets to Trenton. And we're going to talk to our good friend Regina Gia.
They're doing amazing
tomorrow.
Work. I would call them New Jersey's leading think tank at this point.
They really are. They're doing great work. And then last but not least, the firm of King, Mensch, Herniak, Meta, and Collins, who do great work. Our good friend Matt Mensch, an attorney, the mayor of Bridgewater, he will be with us tomorrow as well to give us perspective on not only what's happening up in Central Jersey, assuming you accept that Central Jersey's a thing.
Yeah, I certainly do.
A guy from Morris County can maybe speak better than that than a guy from Camden County, but so we thank our sponsors. We thank you for joining us. Now, after that long windup, let's get to the man of the hour. He is a career law enforcement officer. His resume in the world of law enforcement is ponderous. It would take 15 minutes just to run through it. Many of you know him best as the current sheriff of Morris County, New Jersey. And we were writing about him recently, not just because of the great job he's doing up in Morris County, but he had a very interesting experience off the clock while innocently visiting Orlando down in Florida. So, Sheriff Jim Gannon, welcome to the Save Jersey livecast. It's great of you to sit down with us and visit and tell us how you're doing.
That's great. It's great to be here, Matt. I tell you, what
Pleasure.
a lot of energy you spoke about just now. Wow, it's real powerful. What's going on here? A lot of people moving in the same direction. I have good feelings.
And it's something different than what we've seen and heard in past years.
Yes.
There's energy. I don't want to bury the lead. Let's talk about what happened down in Orlando. You were on a trip, I believe, with your daughter and your grandchildren visiting Disney World, and you were on your way back.
Yes.
And you ran into an unruly character at the airport, which we've all had interesting airport stories, but yours got physical. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, I was just coming back from Disney. I had 2 grandchildren and my daughter's son-in-law, and we had the time of our lives in Disney, and we were coming back in Orlando airport, and the alarm sounded in the airport. If you ever heard an airport alarm, it's it causes a little attention. And I looked over and saw an individual, a male, who was very unruly. I learned later he had assaulted a number of people, and he was threatening to kill people and those types of things. So the police were responding, so I kept a watchful eye on him. And when the first officer got there by himself, I told him who I was. We approached the individual, and he was extremely unruly. And there was a taser deployment on him by the Orlando Police Department, and went to the ground. And I assisted the officer on the ground and handcuffed the individual, and freeing up the airport a little bit.
And there's video of this, Dan, that we
Wow.
posted on Save Jersey. A reader of the website, I don't know how they happen to be watching Orlando television, but they said, Matt, you got to check out this clip from Orlando TV. That's Jim Gannon. And I'm like, hold on, Morris Sheriff Jim Gannon? And they said, yeah. And you can see him very clearly. I forget what color shirt you were wearing, but it was a very distinct.
Green.
It was a green shirt. So you
Right.
can very much see you move in. And I'll say this much. It would have made me step back if you were coming at me. You definitely had presence as you were moving in on that dude. And he ended up the worse for it. Something that struck me about it, it's a great story, obviously.
You never know who you're next to at an airport.
You
Let
don't.
that be a lesson.
No, you definitely
never know
don't.
who you're next to at an airport.
Yeah.
And, you better watch out if Jim Gannon is there. Okay?
You
I
do.
certainly won't misbehave if he's around.
No, I mean, I actually noticed Dan just scooted back a little bit because he's on notice now. But in this day and age, Sheriff, where we hear so many negative things about law enforcement, the need for new training, the need for police to be reined in, investigations, independent insight, this, that, and the other, in the wake of the recent news cycles. I mean, to me, this incident with you in Orlando is a reminder that for many police officers, most of whom, the vast majority of whom do great work, this isn't just a job, it's a calling. Taking care of the public and trying to keep people safe, I mean, it's as much a calling as any other job that involves more than just punching in on a time clock. It's a commitment day to day, and you put your life on the line.
You know something? There's nearly 700,000 full-time police officers in the United States. I
Yeah.
contend every one of them would do that. Every one of them would do that. When we drive down the highway and a police officer has somebody pulled to the side of the road, we slow up, make sure the person's okay. We don't know what we're going to encounter out there. But you know something? I've worked with true heroes my whole career, people who have done this type of work, and I just did what they would be doing.
Yeah, you did, and
So
I mean,
you have benefited from mentors that mentored
Sure.
you.
Sure. Well, absolutely.
That's so important, Sheriff.
It certainly is. We talk about 700,000 police officers in the United States. We talk about 375 million contacts in the United States with citizens.
Right.
There's so many good things going on out there. Yes, there's a few bad apples, and we have systems in place to improve on that and terminate people who are not worthy of wearing the badge. And I think that's extremely important to do. But I see tremendous things, and I've been around a long time. I see tremendous things going on in the community all the time.
And now you're at the point where you're able to mentor others, which must be a great source of comfort and even joy to you.
It is. I swore in a new officer today, and we had a nice discussion for a half hour on my perceptions of the job and how great it is, and the difference that officer will be able to make in the lives of a lot of people. And we had a great conversation, and I think it's important to mentor people and prepare the next generation.
Oh, I can't imagine it being more important than it is right now when our law enforcement officials all over the country are under such stress and really under such surveillance and in such have to be in such a state of anxiety right now, Matt, because of the climate in this country.
And that's one of the purposes of the summit this weekend. It's not just Republicans getting together and talking about vote by mail and whatnot, even though that stuff's important. There's a lot of issue panels, and you're on one of them, Sheriff, talking about the Murphy administration and the impact it's had on law enforcement.
Yes.
I think you might agree, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. It's been overwhelmingly negative.
Yeah, it has. There's so much going on. It's fast and furious coming out of Trenton. And on a national stage, to be perfectly honest with you, police reform if in the right context, I think is good. Can we get better? I think every profession should work at getting better all the time. We should scrutinize what we do. That's really important. But there's been a lot of things. Discussions on qualified immunity. Having no protection on qualified immunity. That's qualified immunity. Political leaders have qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is needed, right, in law enforcement, because you may get dispatched to 123 Main Street and the call is at 122 Main Street. And you don't have a full account as to what's going on. You're making decisions. You're detaining people. All those things in the interest of public safety, and you won't be covered anymore if qualified immunity goes away. What's it going to require? It's going to require a police officer now to get a private insurance policy, and then the insurance company will manage what he does or doesn't do? Is that where we're going? But when
it's going to dissuade a lot of people from going into your profession. We talk about it being a calling. Less people are going to feel that calling.
That's right. Attraction and retention will be a problem, just like in business. But that's a real big issue. We need to support people. We need to train them. We need to hold them accountable to reasonable standards. But we need to support them. If we want to get optimum performance, it's like in your business. It's no difference, right? We want to get optimum performance out of people. We want to give them safety and security. Maslow, right? They spoke about safety and security.
Yes.
To get the most out of that employee. But you need to walk with them. You need to protect them also because they're protecting you. I'm very lucky. I'm the president of the State Sheriff's Association. I happen to be around the state of New Jersey. I haven't bumped into anybody yet that didn't like public safety, that didn't like law and order. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, people that don't vote, I haven't bumped into one yet. That's the reality. Issues, my brother sheriffs are here, issues involving public safety and law and order, rural, suburban, urban, both sexes, races. Everybody wants good law and order. You want to talk about the downtown, thriving downtown, economic development, all those things?
But
you can't have
that's
those
the case,
without good public safety and law and order.
But I mean, if that's the case, then why has the Democrat Party put itself in this position as seeming to be antagonistic to the law enforcement community? Then, I mean, what is the logic behind that?
I don't know. I'm disappointed in that. I'm disappointed in those issues and constraints that are placed on the police and the lack of trust. The perceived lack of trust that is spoken about and all those things. Again, I'm around the state. I see great things in all communities with the police and always working to do better. Right? Always working to do better.
And you see police working with the community, in the community.
Absolutely do.
Have we come to just take a lot for granted? I mean, you represent and you serve one of the counties, I think more than any other in America, symbolizes the American dream. It's a prosperous suburban county in the New York metro area. Have things just been until now too good for too long that we've forgotten how important certain institutions like the police are to our prosperity? I mean, is it really in some ways that simple?
I think so.
I think we take you guys for granted.
I think so. And people will throw out a term of defund the police. What does that mean, first of all? Secondly, what is the plan? What is the plan for defunding the police?
I don't know what it is. All I know is it's defund the police. Well, oh no, wait a minute. One of their ideas is that the police, Sheriff, that the police would be more like counselors and be psychological helpers and be community assistants, or that someone else would do that with the cooperation of the police. Now, how many different jobs and tasks are we going to give to the police?
I mean, I think we've done that forever, right? We've given a lot of responsibilities to the police, and the police have done a great job with them. When we want to talk about you want to talk about homelessness, you want to talk about mental health, you want to talk about addiction, those things that are affecting all the people right now. It's my belief, over my experience for decades and decades, that the police and the emergency room nurses have been taking care of mental health issues and addiction and homelessness. They've been the people out there. I've worked with, I think every cop that's listening, every cop out there has bought somebody Thanksgiving dinner, bought somebody a sandwich that was down and out. That's the reality of the job. And it's my job, and it's our job to get the word out as to what's going on, because I really see the greatest people in the world in this job. They're not in it for the pay necessarily, right? They're not in it for the hours necessarily. Okay, they're in it truly to help people. And I see great things happening all the time. I think that the police are warriors and guardians. They're warriors 10% of the time. We need people to stop bad people from hurting good people. Okay, so there's a warrior mentality. We have to have special weapons and tactics. We have to have the equipment to do that, to protect the community. 90% guardian. 90% guardian, helping people, whether it's a lockout, their car lock, or can't get in the house, or their kid went missing, or whatever. They're guardians of the people. And I think we have to keep that in queue. I think, like you hit on before, there's a lot of responsibilities that have come to police way because they didn't have a home. And the police have taken it. You know,
Right.
if you're not careful, it can become the junk drawer. Everything goes in it, you know, type of thing.
It's a good way of putting it. It's a good metaphor. The junk drawer.
You know,
We all know what that is.
Right, we all have one in our house. It has a little of
Yes,
everything
yes.
in it. But the police have been excellent at doing that type of work, no better in the community, besides your professionals, right? Besides your professionals, but dealing with the community out there all the time, I tell you.
But if you're really in trouble, or somebody's got a gun to your head, you're not going to call a social services worker, Matt, right? I mean, come on.
You know, I've got a different perspective on this than some because I've spent a lot of time as an attorney working as a municipal court prosecutor. And I say it all the time. To your point, Sheriff, when someone is in crisis, even if it's a medical emergency, a purely medical emergency, oftentimes the first person that you encounter is a police officer. So yes, as a constitutionalist, it's very important that we have high standards for our police officers, since that's one of the government officials you encounter on the most regular basis, right? But we also need to stop degrading them. Because when you degrade them and you treat that institution with the attitude that the left right now does, what happens? You degrade the institution, you end up with worse quality officers. It's actually a self-defeating exercise. And hopefully that's one of the things that we're going to talk a lot about this weekend. One more question, because I know we have to let you go. Specifically, sanctuary statehood. New Jersey became a sanctuary state during the Murphy administration. We've now been living under this new regime for a while. How do you see it specifically impacting our communities and our jails?
I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good. When you say to the police, to those correctional police officers, you cannot talk to the immigration authorities. Law enforcement is all about to keep you safe. It's all about communication. We talk to the various people in government that can do those types of things. And when you tell people you can't talk to people, it's never good. Crime will never go down with that. That's just a reality. We're successful in combating crime due to communication. So when I can't talk to the federal authorities or anything, I'm not in favor of it at all. I'm not in favor of it at all. I think our country is our country because we have borders. That's our country, right? We have borders.
And for a state that lived in the shadow of the Twin Towers, and how many of our own citizens, second only to New York. I mean, 9/11 was in part a story of what happens when government does not communicate with other levels and other layers of government, right? So, how we can have so many New Jersey leaders that don't understand that. It continues to blow my mind, Dan. But
hey, Matt, what I say to people, I happen to be at 9/11. I was a responder to 9/11, and I later went on to
that's right, you were.
Right, so I later went to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. I was on CT6, very proud of that. And we had a sign, and the sign said, "Every day September 10th." That's where we got to be. That's where we have to be, and we have to communicate to do that, okay? Don't think that we're always in the clear, because we're not. So we have to have the best police officers that are trained, that are supported, that are coordinating with local, county, state, federal authorities, and then we'll be successful. Then we'll protect this beautiful land forever.
Sheriff Jim Gannon,
Hey, Matt.
On
Thanks.
duty
Great.
24/7,
Thank you.
whether
Thank you,
he's
Thanks
Sheriff.
so much.
Great
Appreciate
to
it.
see you.
whether he's keeping North Jersey safe or people just trying to get home from Disney World. He's pulling double duty all the time.
I'm looking forward to go back to Disney.
I bet you are.
Yeah.
I bet you are. And next time he's maybe going to drive.
I may.
Well, good luck on your panel.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. I'll see you soon. All
Absolutely.
right. Be well.
Perfect.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was Sheriff Jim Gannon, everybody. He's on a panel with a bunch of sheriffs. I think 4 or 5 of our Republican
Right.
sheriffs here in New
Right.
Jersey a little later this afternoon. And I mean, God, all you have to do is watch the news. Have they ever had a busier job?
About bad people and good people. Okay, he talked about warriors that need to go after bad people. Well, in the Democrat Party, you're not allowed to say something like bad people. You're not allowed to talk about bad people and good people. You're not allowed to talk about good and evil because they don't recognize such things. They don't seem to recognize such things anymore.
Well, they can't even give you a definition of what a woman is.
There you go, right there. They can't tell you what a woman is, so how the hell would they know bad people, good people?
Well, I think you've nailed it. I mean, for years, guys and gals like you and I and our friends that are here this weekend have talked about the dangers of moral relativism.
Right.
And some people looked at you cautiously, some people, kind of grinning or grimacing even. Oh, there you go again, moralizing. I mean, now we're seeing what the consequences of that regime are, which is that we live in a world where we can't even agree on basic definitions.
And Matt,
And that's dangerous.
sadly, we live in a world, I'm sorry to say this, where the Pope himself said, "Who am I to judge?" The Pope said, "Who am I to judge?"
That's kind of what you're there for, dude.
This is it's a little scary.
Well, and that's another good point you raised because, we live in New Jersey, one of the most Catholic states out there
Right.
in the Union. We're here on a Friday in Lent, so I'm very upset I'm not going to be able to get a steak tonight, but it is what it is because that's one of the things you want to do when you come to Atlantic City, right? But the church is supposed to be one of those institutions that's a rock. That's what Christ said to Peter, right?
It
You're the rock
seems
on which
to
I'm going to
me-
build my church. The church isn't
No.
feeling like a rock these days, or at least the
No.
leadership isn't.
No, and it seems to me that was always one of the, anyway, for me, the attractive things about the Catholic Church was the fact that it was changeless.
Yes.
Okay, and that you somebody had to set the permanent changeless standards, and
So I guess this is one of kind of the stealth themes of this weekend. There's so many topics which are going to be bandied about in these conference rooms. You can't see fully on the computer, but we're in one of the wings at Harris here. And I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 rooms, and there's going to be various panels going on. It's the importance of our institutions. Not that institutions don't need to evolve. Sometimes they need to change. Certainly sometimes you need new leadership at the
Right.
helm of your institutions. I mean, we
Absolutely.
have one right now called Congress. It certainly needs to have a change in leadership. But ultimately, when you're constantly, it's what the left does, when they're constantly degrading motherhood, family, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a police officer.
we're getting a thing now where we have to say
It's-
we can't say pregnant women anymore. We have to say pregnant persons.
Where are the feminists? Right? And that's why we're going to try to talk to some of our courageous conservative women this weekend.
You
'cause we
have
want their
asked the
perspective.
question, Matt. You posed the question: Is feminism dead?
I said, yeah, I
Because
tweeted
of
that earlier
this.
today, yeah.
Yeah.
I got some interesting responses. But it's a question we need to ask, right?
It would seem to me, or maybe, where is feminism going? What is it becoming? Is there such a thing anymore? When we don't even know what a woman is. And we have to say pregnant person. And I heard that Forbes magazine had a headline, pregnant person. They couldn't bring themselves to say pregnant woman. You gotta wonder. And you gotta say to yourself, how much further down the road are we going to allow this to go?
Right. And that's what you hope. You hope this is one of those times, 2022 specifically is what I'm talking about, where the American people say, all right, you know what, enough. Pause. Let's take a deep breath. Let's evaluate the direction we're going in, and maybe it's time to head in another. And I think that's what is going to happen. If you look at some of these, yeah, you're next. We're live. We're live if you're ready. It's time for guest number 2.
Oh, I'm guest number 2?
You're guest number 2. Don't read anything into that, though. Guest number 1 had a badge. You don't.
I don't have a badge.
You don't have a badge. Folks, this is... I'm going to move this mic a little closer
I'll scoot in.
because you're notoriously soft-spoken.
That I am.
Yes. So for those who don't know,
You putting this on?
yes. It looks good on you.
Thank you.
This guy's claim to fame is that many years ago, when he was head of the Young Republicans in New Jersey, I was his illustrious executive director.
That is true.
It was the year that changed the party.
First place I ever went to after I became state YR chair was to Matt Rooney's house in Oakland, New Jersey.
That's right. I was in Oakland at the time.
That's right.
Down in Camden County.
The foot of the Ben Franklin Bridge?
Close, Walt Whitman.
Okay.
I mean, Ben Franklin's right.
Whatever.
Yeah,
I saw a
quick turn.
sign.
Yeah, it's all right
somewhere
there.
near the Delaware River.
Yeah, it was 3 hours from my house.
But you will see for a guy from Essex County, and among his many titles, he's chairman of the Essex County Republican Party, Al Barless. He knows his geography because he was the head of the Republican commissioners that just crafted a new map.
Yes.
Which Al believes, and a lot of people looking at this map believe, is going to help Republicans expand their number of seats in the state legislature in 2023, and maybe even put it, I don't want to jinx us,
Don't jinx it.
in position to maybe someday soon actually have a majority again.
Listen, I think we're there. I think we have a combination of a couple of things going on. We've got an incredible environment over the next 2 years nationally with some terrific wins at our back. And you've got a map that, as you said, Matt, it's a truly competitive map. I mean, look, you're not going to get 40 competitive districts. I view a competitive map as, is it competitive enough to change control? And I believe that this map is. Between what happened in District 4, District 11, District 16, District 38, District 14, I believe it's definitely there.
And we're a stone's throw from District 4 right now.
Yes.
Sitting here in Atlantic City, it's on the other side of South Jersey, closer to the Delaware River. Right now, obviously, we're on the Atlantic. And that's a district that I think, at least as of now, assuming Republican recruitment goes well, is probably going to be the top battleground next time around. And can you explain why that is?
So
what changed about that
It
district?
should be the one of the top battlegrounds. I think 11 is also there, just because it's a split district now. District 4, Senator Madden, the incumbent now, I believe got 54% of the vote. That district now has swung 3.5 points in the Republican direction, with him winning with 54% of the vote. You've added better Gloucester County towns. You've taken out, I believe it's Lindenwold, is the Camden County town that was taken out, which is, I want to say it was like a 70-30 Democrat town. So that's out. You picked up Buena Vista. So there's enough in there now in terms of good territory for Republicans and having lost some bad terrain for us as a party. And I think you saw with Senator Durr, and we've got a competitive race in Gloucester this year for control of the county commissioner board. I think Gloucester's got some good stuff. Ambrosino's always been fighting hard in Camden County. And,
Rich Ambrosino, Camden County Republican chairman.
Right, absolutely. Devoted long-time Republican, and he's doing God's work down there. I can relate. Being the Republican chair in Essex, it's not easy for either one of us, and we have the track marks on our backs to prove it. And then you've got Western Atlantic, and I think that district is positioned very, very well.
It's fascinating because, being a South Jersey guy, the South Jersey machine, just a few years ago, before election 2019, when Mike Testa and Eric Simonson and Antoine McClellan won their seats and won, there was one Republican legislator for, I think, the southern 8 districts, Chris Brown at the time,
Yes.
here in Atlantic County. Now it's changed dramatically, and there's a good chance, depending on how 2023 goes, that the machine, Dan, is going to be pushed back to just a couple of river districts 5, 6, and then 7 always kind of, it's like an
It's not.
affiliate of the machine, but
Yeah.
Troy kind of does his own thing.
Yeah, and they try
sometimes.
to sell that as competitive. And I mean, anybody that knows anything about down here knows District 7's not.
Yeah, Diane Allen for years obviously held that seat,
an
but she was
anomaly.
never able to translate that down ballot. What about 11? So 11, we now have 2 Republican Assembly women
Yep.
in that district, and we have Vin Gopal,
Yes.
who I think had the scare of
Just
his
squeaked
political
by.
life.
Yeah, he just squeaked by.
There was a good period of time there on election night when a lot of people thought that he was done. So we'll see if it makes him vote any better in Trenton.
I wouldn't bet on it.
But that's right
If he
up
wants
there
to
with
get
Fort.
reelected. He's got to be with us and be opposed to everything Murphy wants to do.
How tight is that district now, Al?
So that district stayed relatively the same. I think it was a change of maybe 300 votes by swapping out West Long Branch for Fairhaven.
Okay.
Negligible at best. You know, I mean, listen, that District 11 today, when I worked there, it was District 12. I mean, that district has been a competitive district for, 20 plus years. You know, when you look at now Senator Earl Scanlon, he lost his first race for the Assembly in 05 by 65 votes.
That seems like it was a lifetime ago
Yeah,
that
it was only
he fell
16
short.
years ago. Yeah, right. And that was a split district then because you had Ellen Karcher in the Senate, Jen Beck and Mike Panter in the Assembly. So that district I would say then was worse than it is today because it had East Windsor, it had Hightstown, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it went all the way out there. So look, I think they got a great shot. You have 2 terrific incumbent Assemblywomen there. You've got a plethora of candidates in Monmouth County that could run that I think will be.
Yeah, they have no shortage of a bench there.
No. That's a problem I would love to have.
And I know
Well,
down
Matt,
here.
Matt, I know you think these contests for nominations to run in these various counties and districts are good. You like these primary contests, right?
He and I have fought about this for 15 years.
Much to the chagrin of Al, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're in Al's position, it's a major headache, right?
Yes.
Because it's like being a kindergarten teacher, right? You're like pulling people apart, trying to eat each other's crayons.
But
And-
Matt
and if
thinks it's healthy.
Well, it's healthy for him because he's selling ad space on the website. That's why let's not kid ourselves.
I thought we were capitalists,
Oh, sorry. Listen,
Al.
it's fine.
Well, tell us why you think it's healthy, Matt.
Well, look, I mean, I think that we there's different kinds of primaries, right?
Yeah.
If you have a primary that's just nuclear war, with candidates getting hyper-personal and dropping bombs on each other, that cannot be a good thing. But if you do have, I'll give you a great example, Morris County. Even though their convention was a little bit of a mess a couple weeks ago, Morris County has had more participation now than they've had in years.
Right.
And it's because they now have this line. So I actually think, and this is something Al would agree with, a lot of people argued against the line. I myself was unsure.
Right.
I think it's actually made the process more democratic. So I think it really depends on, and America itself is really an example of this. Democracy is a good thing. It depends on how you do it.
Right. And listen, we kid about primaries, and obviously as a county chair,
Yeah.
I don't like primaries. But you're right, Matt. Within certain reason, primaries are a good thing, right? If all candidates are focused on the issue, if you're just looking to Matt's point to just napalm the guy or the gal as your opponent, then where does that leave us? Right? Then post primary, you have a hard time bringing everybody together because everybody is so personally upset by what transpired. But if you kept it about real issues as opposed to things of that nature, then then primaries are okay. And you're right.
Someone's voting record, someone's ideas.
Right. I mean,
Right.
look, and to your point about Morris County, that primary, that convention that they had last year and this year, to Chairwoman Ali's credit, has, in my opinion, sort of reinvigorated the county committee members to be a part of the process. Right? Like I have always said that that's the job of the county committee. If there's a vacancy, they fill it. Right? If there's a seat that is held, they're the ones that elect the successor.
And
So-
that's something I've said to people for years that complain about the county nominating process. I point out that there are counties, and I don't know what it's like in Essex right now, but many Republican counties, there are scores of open committee seats. So you can't really complain unless you're going to go out there and take one of those seats in your community that's open.
Right.
The
Right.
people in the room are obviously going to be the ones making the decision.
And if these
Go to be in the room.
primaries bring more people into the party that fill those seats, it's like Matt says, the challenge is keeping them involved.
Listen, we're
keeping them
Republicans in New
involved.
Jersey. It's not like we're beating away people with a stick to
Right.
be a part of our party, right? So, I mean, this whole thing of we're a big tent, we welcome ideas. We have to. There's not enough of us to say you're not allowed in, but you're allowed in. I mean, it's not Texas, it's not the South, it's not certain parts of this country. We're Republicans in New Jersey. We have to be willing to let as many people be a part of this party.
And I can speak as a Republican in New Jersey who was a Democrat, who was an ardent and active Democrat, who came to the Republican Party and was welcomed with open arms and encouraged. And that's why I'm here today. So I think we ought to let everybody know. Get involved in your local Republican Party. You will be welcomed. You will receive a warm welcome. There is a place for you.
And he's not kidding
Trust
about
me,
being a
I mean
hardcore Democrat. Weren't you at like the '68 convention?
Oh, yes, I was a 1960s, I guess you might even say radical Democrat. I was an ardent liberal. I was at the '68 convention, which was a very messy affair. And I was one of the McCarthy kids that we were not in the streets. We were neat and clean for Gene McCarthy at that time. But we did experience the tear gas. We saw the riots close up. I saw them close up. I saw everything that really happened. And it was messy.
And to your point, like this is the conversation Matt and I have had for years, right?
Yeah.
That as a party, we cannot limit ourselves to some purity litmus test,
Right,
where only 2 or 3 things allow you in,
right.
right? We have to be willing. One of those being, how long have you been a Republican?
Oh,
Right,
no,
that's
I know,
you.
no, we can't do that.
That's my point.
Yeah,
right?
no,
I mean,
no.
We just can't. That doesn't help us grow this party. That doesn't help us to be in a position to do what we're ultimately supposed to do, which is pick up seats. And how long have you been a Republican? What is your stance on abortion? What is your stance on this issue, that issue?
But this is a massive question that you're better positioned than most to answer, though. But you also would agree with me that there has to be some, maybe litmus test isn't the right word, but there has to be some commonality between Republicans. Otherwise, we don't have a brand.
Right.
So
I
what
agree.
does
Yes.
that? So what does that look like in a state like New Jersey in 2022?
So to me,
what are our issues?
So look, to me, I think that our commonality has to be freedom, right? Individual liberty, and wanting a smaller, more responsive government. And these social issues, I think, when we focus solely on that, and we let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? That's my opinion.
And wanting a more efficient government, and you mean physically responsible government.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But see, the thing that's so interesting about this, though, is if we were sitting here having this conversation in 2002, social issues are what? Abortion, perhaps government's role in paying for contraception, gay marriage.
Yep.
Right.
It's completely changed. Now
Right.
social issues, to some degree, educational choice,
Absolutely right.
are really trending in the Republican direction.
100%.
Yes.
So that's a non-strictly economic issue, which seems like it's a winner almost everywhere this year.
Right. But my point, and that's my point, is okay, if you're pro-choice, but you want government out of teaching your kids education and leaving it to the school district and the parents, why aren't you as much of a Republican as somebody who's pro-life? And my opinion is when we do these litmus tests, that if you're not with us on this one issue, we're letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. If we truly want to be a party that is a big tent party and everybody is welcome, and they can look like you, they can look like me, they can believe in my faith and in your faith,
Right.
then the reality is we have to be willing to let everybody in who has different ideas. It doesn't make them a bad person.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Al,
You have to have the dialogue, too,
Right.
Matt.
Well,
my experience has been that the Republican Party is much more tolerant of diverse points of view than the Democrat Party.
Well, I mean, case in point, Al's talking about abortion. There's been some stories in the media recently about Morris County Democrats running out pro-life
what are we
Democrats
talking about here?
out of their party. So it's interesting to see how the roles have kind of reversed here in a lot of ways. Spoiler alert, Al.
Yes.
You technically qualify as a minority, even though you're not the kind of guy that likes to talk about
That is true.
that stuff. It's not the most important thing to you. But one thing that strikes me about the Republican Party in 2022 is we do seem to be diversifying, and the data backs that up in the polling. Even today, walking in, I saw a lot of Republican friends who don't fit the stereotype of what a Republican is. I'm going to a Brexit breakfast tomorrow. Many of our fine black Republicans are here, very active. Are we doing something right, Al? And if we are, what is it?
So I think we've always been doing it right. The problem is
What's changed?
The problem is we've actually stopped letting the other side define it. Right?
That's what's changed.
Yeah, we sort of used to just take it. Right? We used to just sort of sit there and take it because we don't believe in identity politics, right? Like I don't lead with the fact that I
Absolutely
wasn't
not.
born in this country and that I'm a first generation immigrant, right? I am who I am. And so I think we're now actually embracing our diversity more. We're not shying away from it. And we're pushing back on them when they claim that we're not diverse. Look, I'll give you a case in point. You have this new legislative map. You have the new District 27. Their choice is Senator Nia Gill or Dick Cody. I'm hearing they're going to give the line to the 70-something-year-old white Irishman. No offense to white Irishmen.
As a future old white Irishman.
Right.
Yes.
Over the black female senator.
Right,
So, but you're the party that doesn't like diversity?
right.
Well, and an interesting
Right,
side note there,
exactly.
folks, and this is just something to keep an eye on. Nia Gill, who you put 100 issues on the table, I probably disagree with her on at least 90.
101.
But she has a reputation of sometimes being a bit of a rebel. She signed on to the committee with Joe Panaccio to investigate the nursing homes.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to me that all of a sudden she finds herself on the chopping block, potentially. Not saying it's the only reason it's happening, but it may
there's
have
other
not
factors there.
helped her
But my
case with her
point
party.
is, if we did it,
Yeah.
I mean, we wholly
We
held
would
it
be
back.
excoriated.
Are you kidding me? We'd be all over the place.
Absolutely.
Do you, Jim, before we let you go, because I know you have a lot to do, Jim Gannon, Sheriff Gannon was here
Yes.
before. Something we started out talking about is the energy here just feels different this year.
Yeah.
People can see. In past years, there's always been a few hundred people, but the concourse didn't look as full. We're having to talk loudly because there's so many people this year.
Tremendous energy,
Do
yeah.
you feel it? Is it
Oh,
different?
absolutely. 100%. You saw it walking in the door, right? Before you went underneath the balloon archway there, right? I mean, just the staff and everybody here. Listen, you've got, as Republicans, we have a phenomenal opportunity going into this election year, congressionally, nationally, a couple of seats, I believe, in our state, and then leading into 2023 with the legislative race. I mean, it's a good time to be a Republican, even in New Jersey.
So if you got some time this weekend, folks, I mean, certainly we're giving you it away to be involved down here, but nothing beats being here in person. Fix your hair pretty. Drive on down to Atlantic City. That wasn't a shot at you, by the way, Al.
I figured that was.
That was I bust his chops all the time, but I was not actually trying to do that.
I can't wait till you're bald. I really can't.
Well, I mean, knock on wood, that's the only thing I have going for me. I'm fat. I'm not that good looking, but all the men in my family have had their hair at least well into their 60s and 70s. So
That disappoints me.
yeah, so that's one victory you're probably not going to have. You're going to fit in your clothes longer than me.
I'm an Essex Republican. I can wait a while.
Al Barlas, it's
you
always a
very much,
pleasure
gentlemen.
chatting, and I will see you around here
Absolutely. Thanks for having
this
me.
afternoon and evening.
Great to see
Thank you. You too.
Be well, my friend.
See you, buddy. Take
That's
care.
Al Barlas, chairman of the Essex County Republican Party, a fellow member of the Blue County Republican Club. Even though the state's looking less blue every month, Dan.
I certainly hope so. I hope the trend continues.
I hope so, too.
I really do. And Matt, I wanted to say, because you were talking about people coming down here, you can sign up for just Saturday only session, and you can be here for the Saturday, all day Saturday. There's a huge program tomorrow, all day. I have the program here, and it's a very, very full program tomorrow. Goes from very early in the morning And there's
Yeah, what do we
all
got
kinds of
going on
panels.
here? I don't have mine in front of me.
Well, there's all kinds of panels tomorrow, and one of the great
There's a
things.
particularly great panel at 11:45.
Oh yeah, that's the one of some radio personalities.
I'm pretty stoked about this
Radio
panel.
personalities, yeah. That's
Myself
Matt
and
Rooney.
Rich Zioli.
Rich Cioli, Dom Giordano,
Yes.
and Harry Hurley. Some of your favorite radio personalities are all going to be here together on a panel tomorrow.
So I don't know how that much hot air is going to be contained or be appropriately processed by the HVAC system here at Harrah's.
And you got some pretty big egos there. Matt Rooney, I accept him from that. But you got some pretty big egos
Well, you
in
know
that
some
room.
big egos, Dan, and I
With
mean,
that
I've got an
panel.
ego. I have trouble wearing hats, but there's much worse than me.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
We actually have our next guest already, too.
Oh, wonderful.
We do.
Good.
We're just going to keep it going here.
Good.
As soon as he's done talking to the chairman.
Keep it rolling.
No, you don't have to apologize.
You fixed it though, so you fixed it.
I appreciate it. Let me say something. You don't know how many times a day. And we're talking about editing a typo on Save Jersey. How many times a day I type something and then I'm heading into a meeting and I mangle a syllable and someone corrects me.
So sorry.
And no, it's good because you did it the nice way and you messaged me directly.
Yeah, no.
Rather than at the end of a hardly worked upon post commenting in the comment section. You did it the right way is what I'm saying, so I appreciate it. Don't get Dan started on the Oxford comma. We'll be here until next summer. Come over here, Superman. But I do appreciate it. She helped me big time.
Yeah,
I was an H. I forgot an H.
that's Suzanne is the. You want to talk about future candidates and future stars? She gave a speech at our screening convention, which was just out of this world. I mean, like, you know, you hear candidates give speeches all the time, and it's kind of like
It all becomes white noise after a while.
Here's another speech. It's another. I mean, she had the crowd. It was like a pin drop when she was talking about why she's running and the difference between the leadership in Manville from Mayor Underko and Councilman Maynard and how they handled Ida. And I mean, because you remember, Manville got like devastated with Ida. I mean, like, you know, they're still digging out from it. And
That's
talking
going to
about-
take a while. It's a Hurricane Sandy kind of
yeah,
situation.
and talking about when, you know, how all the Democrats came in for the photo ops. Everyone from, you know, local council candidates all the way up to, you know, the actual president of the United States.
Brandon was
comes-
there.
Yeah.
I don't know
in.
if he knew where he was.
And
Yeah.
you know, she turns around and she says that you know, they're there for the photo op.
Yeah.
And the person who took no photos, you know, the mayor, Suzanne Maynard, they weren't there taking photos. They were there
because
doing the
they're working.
work. Yeah.
They're working. They had people in crisis, and they were doing what good elected officials are supposed to do. You're public servants. You're supposed to serve the public, and that's something
Well,
that
yeah.
you excel at. So we got to introduce you for anybody that doesn't recognize this guy, who I joke whenever we interview him. He looks like he's out of central casting for a politician.
Absolutely.
And I don't mean that in a
Yeah,
negative way.
no.
I was told by Mayor Perry that I have to get used to like a shore mayor where, you know, down in
Yes.
Monmouth County and
Well,
so
Tony,
casual. This is, you know.
We'll talk to Tony Perry tomorrow, Murphy's mayor. He's the mayor of Murphystown, Middletown. He'll come here and he'll have like the polo shirt on
yeah.
and probably his boat shoes, you know. This is Matt Mensch, everybody, who is the mayor of Bridgewater. It's got to be one of the most populous towns in New Jersey that is under Republican political control.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
If not the, it's got to be one.
One of, I think, Oak Ridge and Middletown may be the only two notable bigger ones.
He's also a partner at King, Mensch, Herniak, and Maida, who, besides being a great firm, folks, also happens to be one of our sponsors of this year's Save Jersey livecast from the NJGOP Summit. So we thank you for buying Dan the Coca-Cola and bag of chips I'm going to give him at some point to keep him from fainting.
No, we appreciate what you do. There's so few conservative voices out there that anything we could do to support.
Unfortunately, it has to be me, but
Whatever. Listen, options are few. Like I said, we only have so many choices, so we want to keep you here. So
I appreciate that. It's always good to talk to you because you're a dynamic guy, and there's always a lot going on in your town. There's always a lot going on, but you handle it well. And I did a piece on him recently because there was an unfortunate encounter at the mall up there. Between law enforcement and I guess a couple young men at the mall, and Governor Murphy did what he always did and just assume it's a situation where the police were 100% to blame, and he issued a statement before the facts even came out, which, look, we just had Sheriff Gannon on here earlier. We're constitutionalists. That's one thing we believe as Republicans. Everyone in government needs to be held accountable, including law enforcement, but you issued a very sober, poised statement that we need to get the facts before we make a decision. We need to support law enforcement, but we also need to make sure that justice is being administered. It was what you expect of elected officials. Does it distress you that there's so little of that anymore in our politics?
Yes and no. I mean, it always surprises me because there's stuff that I see either that we try to do or I see other people do that they get all this credit for. So they say, well, why isn't everyone doing that? Why is that something that is notable? Because to your point, so few people do. And I think it's politicians naturally cater to the loudest voices.
Yeah.
And the loudest voices aren't necessarily the majority of the people. They're the people that are there in the room shouting at them, or the press who wants to put out the certain, whatever the storylines are, whatever the narrative is. And everyone wants to be liked. Nobody wants people shouting at them. So they go wherever that goes, whatever the...
And this has made it worse, social media, right? I mean,
God.
it's what I do when I'm not practicing law like you practice law, but I can't deny that it's definitely made it harder to develop perspective, which is so important in politics, not just to react emotionally, but to get the facts and then form an opinion. So maybe that's all the more important.
Well, social media what it has done is it's magnified people's feelings as opposed to thinking. And there's, as an attorney, Matt, from your training and background and experience, there's an enormous difference between feeling and thinking. And what people are doing on social media, Mayor, is they're pouring out their feelings and they think it's thought. It's not thought. It isn't. 9 times out of 10, it's not thought out. It's their feelings of the moment.
Right.
And it's only one person's feeling.
Yeah.
And it also allows you to just say something without thinking. You post, you go, it's immediate.
Right.
And if you took a few moments to, think about it, maybe you would have said that a day later.
Yeah.
But it's too
Exactly.
late. It's that immediacy.
That's right.
And it's also impersonal. I'm always amazed when I get people might comment on social media. I have like 15 people that like to, no matter what I do, they troll me on social media. Good,
Lord.
bad, and different. It's the same group of 15 people. But what I'm always amazed about is I'll see some of those same people in person. Mayor, how you doing? How's everybody doing? Excuse me? You just spent last week calling me a crook, calling me this, calling me that, and now you're at the kids' soccer games.
The keyboard
and-
warriors.
Yeah, and you sit there and say, like, just be consistent at least. You know,
Yeah.
if you're not going to say it to my face, why are you saying it on social media?
Be an honest, real, genuine person. We used to talk about beer muscles.
Right.
Now we have
right.
Twitter muscles.
Twitter muscles.
No,
Yeah,
but
you're
I
a
like
tough
what
guy
you
when
said,
you're on
keyboard
Twitter.
warriors. I like that term.
That's
Yeah.
what it is.
And it's epidemic. When people had time to sit down and actually write a letter, someone wrote a book once called "Letters I Never Sent."
Yeah.
When you had time to write a letter and then you looked it over and you read the letter and you said, nah, I don't think I want to send that. I think I'm going to just put this in a drawer. Okay?
Well, you may do the same thing as an attorney. There are times when it's not time sensitive where I will write a letter
100%.
and then I will deliberately put it aside and say, you know what, I'm going to read it over, or maybe even have my assistant read it over in the morning before it goes out.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's because attorneys having worked for them for 30 years,
Yeah.
okay, more than 30 years, still have, I like to think they do anyway, Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, they still have enormous respect for the printed word. I did say
Yes.
the printed word, okay?
Well, because you can manipulate people with the written word, but it's harder, right? Because, again, you can digest something at your own speed, which is one of the things I like about this weekend, because it's an opportunity to actually get people together face to face. And not everybody in this room loves each other.
Right.
That's like any, if you want to think of a party as a family, a party is got people here that love each other, people here that probably would not want to be at the same table tonight eating dinner. They'll move a little bit further away, maybe. I don't know. But the ability to have these discussions one-on-one, it's something that's kind of lost in politics, isn't it?
It is, and it's trying to find that common ground, and there's so much polarization out there now. I'm sure you've seen it, you've talked about it, where if you work together with somebody from the opposite party, all of a sudden both sides demonize you. Wait a second, you're working with a Democrat on this? Oh my gosh, you're not a true conservative anymore, or vice versa on the Democratic side. Somebody crosses the line, and the far left eats them alive, and as opposed to trying to find common ground either within our own party, where you sit there and say, look, I'm maybe more conservative, probably align with you guys on opposing issues.
Yeah.
Some members of our party are not as conservative as we might be, but we still have core principles which unite us that say, okay, we're going to agree to disagree on these items, but here's where we can work together.
Well, that's what we were just talking to Al Bartless
Yes,
about. What do
yes.
you see as the issues? Because this is a topic of the weekend. What are the issues that unite Republicans in 2022 as we head into a year where it could be an historic year for the party?
I think there's a couple. I mean, taxes are always the basic one, cost of living. And we're seeing that now, not just with taxes so much as obviously all the prices going up and what's happening with the economy. Somebody once told, actually a Democrat operative told me once, I was talking about my messaging, I was running for mayor, and I wanted to get a different perspective. So I was talking to a friend of mine who's on the Democratic side of the aisle, and I was talking about taxes. He says, Mayor, don't talk, or councilman at that time, don't talk about taxes as your lead issue. I said, why not? That's Republicans. This is what we do, is talk about taxes.
Right.
And he said, nobody ever believes anyone's going to do anything about taxes. So even though that might be everyone's number one issue, it's not what anybody votes on, because they don't believe any politician is going to come in and lower
It's a
taxes.
very cogent observation. I've heard
So-
people tell me that when I've tried to talk to them.
It's
They say
unfortunate.
nobody's going to lower taxes. Forget it.
So they don't believe the candidate that comes to the door and says, vote for me, I'm Republican, we're going to lower your taxes. And they're going to say, Matt, you're full of it. You're not going to lower taxes any more than the Democrat or the other Republican in the election or whatever. So then they move on to your second issue. What's your second issue? You got to have taxes first. Everyone's got it. But what's your second issue? And here in New Jersey, I think that's something that we as a party need to also realize, right? Voters in New Jersey, historically, at least so far over the past 10, 15 years, aren't voting on their pocketbooks. Not the same way that we expect them to. I mean, Phil Murphy ran and said, I'm going to raise your taxes. If taxes are your issue, I'm not your state. And we still voted for the guy.
They still voted for
So-
it.
And you occupy a county, right?
Right.
That you would think more than most places in the United States, people have an incentive to vote their pocketbooks. I mean, living in Somerset County ain't cheap.
Right.
In most places in Somerset County, everywhere in Somerset County, really. So, what's been your secret in your town?
So
How do Republicans break through?
So I think what you do is you really have to go out and talk to voters about the issues that they're talking about at their kitchen table. And yeah, it's taxes, but it's more than that. It's jobs. It's the concern about what's the economy doing? Are you employed or are you not employed? If you're not employed, I mean, we all know unemployment in New Jersey, that whole system has been a disaster.
Yes.
How the states handled that.
Everyone knows somebody that had to wait months,
Months
to get a
So-
check.
So you have that issue. And if you're a small business owner, how has your business been impacted by the COVID policies that destroyed some of these small businesses, or the inflation and the costs of they're going up now that are destroying those businesses? And talk about those issues more than just the generic. We're going to come in and lower them. Phil Murphy wants to raise your taxes. The Democratic Party wants to raise your taxes. We all know they do, and we still vote for them. So at a local level, I think it's focusing on the local issues. People want to drag me into all kinds of stuff. When Trump was in office, they'd want to drag into, where are you on Trump? Where are you, a Trump person, not a Trump person? And or whatever the issues were at the time. And we always focus on the fact that I'm the mayor of Bridgewater. I am here to ensure that we have our roads paved, that your the snow's being plowed, that we're here to deliver the services that you elected me to represent you on. I'm not running for Congress. I'm not a congressman. So focus on those
Very
issues.
important, and we've heard that from a lot of local officials, Matt, and many, especially many who have gone door to door, okay? And we heard a wonderful bit of advice from Senator Durr, who's now a hero here in the Republican Party.
I see him
today.
move the other end of the room right
Senator
now,
Durr,
working the room. He's a
right,
celebrity.
Ed Durr, who said, when you go to the door, the first thing you need to do is listen. Don't give them your spiel. Ask them what they're concerned about and shut up. This is what Ed Durr did.
That's it.
And he speaks the same language, that you're there to serve them and their concerns.
You know, you have the political class. And all of us here, no matter what we say, we are the political class. We're in this room today. We pay more attention to politics than the average person in the state does.
It's a disease.
It's whatever's wrong with us. There's something wrong with us, but we can't help it, right?
Yeah, I had good parents.
Yes.
I don't know what
Right?
happened.
But like, even I think about some of the stuff that in town that we might go back and forth with on it between the council members or the mayor and council on some resolution or some issue that we spend 5 meetings debating, and then we think we come out with a great result and we're real proud of this. Not a single go knock on doors. No residents are paying attention to that issue. They don't know what you did. They don't care that you said, and not because they're not interested, but because that's not what they care about. It's some issue that the politicians have wrapped themselves in that they think is important, but it's not the core issues. Is
Right.
my road getting paved? When is my road getting paved?
Is the trash getting
Is
picked
the
up?
trash getting picked up? Why are we doing? Those are the issues. And you knock on doors, that's what you hear. And like in Bridgewater, when I was running, true to the point, people would talk about taxes and cost, but for us in Bridgewater, they immediately moved to development, overdevelopment, and quality of life. That's what they cared about in Bridgewater. That's what they voted on in Bridgewater. That's how I run the primary, was because they looked at the quality of life that the former mayor was proposing and the quality of life and the policies that we wanted, and that was the issue that they voted on.
Well, case in point, we were talking to Al Barless about the value of primaries. Our good buddy Al. Al and I always go back and forth about primaries. He's a chairman, I get it. I love a good fight, right?
Yep.
You're an example of sometimes it's good to have a honest conversation.
I think it can be because, to a degree, and it's having that conversation about who should be your standard bearer, and not letting good people get pushed down because we're going to keep the status quo. This guy's been there for 20 years and we want him to be there for 20 years. The problem that we have sometimes, as I see it, is we eat our own more than Democrats do. They have a primary.
Oh, yes.
But when they come out with their primary,
They're united.
they unite behind that candidate.
Absolutely.
And we as Republicans seem to continue to have a litmus test. And if you don't check off every box, then we turn around and say, well, you know what? You're not conservative. You won the primary, but you're not conservative enough for me, so I'm sitting out this election.
I wonder if some of that's because the Democrats, for as much as they talk about the diversity of their party, which I think is starting to change, there's not much diversity when it comes to their viewpoints. In the GOP, there actually is a lot of
That's right.
diversity.
Exactly.
Like a great example right now is the Ukraine. At this conference
Exactly.
this weekend, you're probably going to find at least 3 different opinions on Ukraine.
Right.
There's a couple people that maybe want to have a no-fly zone. There's some people that think that, it's not our concern. Then you got a lot of people who think that, well, it is our concern, but we shouldn't be sending troops in. I don't think you have that kind of diversity in the Democrat Party anymore.
No.
And certainly they don't tolerate it.
No, and that's it. And I think we win when it comes to the idea. We really are inclusive of all kinds of ideas and accepting of all kinds of ideas. But after that primary, and it goes the other way too. I picked on you saying, hey, you're not conservative, I'm not going to vote. It goes the other way too, which is, somebody says, oh, the conservative candidate won. This he's too far right. He doesn't represent me. I'm not going to vote. And at the end of the day, whether you were a Hirsch Singh voter, a Phil Rizzo voter, or a Jack Ciattarelli voter, is there any one of that group of candidates that thinks that Phil Murphy is the better candidate
I would hope
between
not.
those 3, right? So at the end of the day,
But we had some Republicans that would not support Jack Ciattarelli.
right.
And they could have been the reason why
And
he
that's
didn't
the problem.
win.
That's the problem that you have, is to sit there and say, whether you thought he was the best candidate ever, and there's a lot of people that will tell you that, whether you think that there was areas he could improve, fine. But does anybody disagree that Phil Murphy is Zach Chiarelli is 10 times the candidate, or would have been 10 times the governor that Phil Murphy is?
No question.
So how do we sit that out and allow the opportunity to pass us? And that's, to me, what we talk about primaries. It's great we have primaries. We can talk at a local level or congressional primaries, whatever they may be. But we have to find enough common ground to say, once we pick our standard bearers, these are our folks. And we need to work
Absolutely.
for them. And if we don't like them, we think next time, you know what? This particular assemblyman, he's okay. Well, then if he's not good enough, then maybe he'll get primaried in 2 years, and you can have that
Because
conversation.
at the end of the day, there really is a difference between the two parties. There's a fundamental difference between the two parties.
Well, there's a lot of people that do not believe that, though. And that's something I think that has to be confronted at summits like this. To me, even if you're not happy with the current direction of the GOP, and certainly God knows that I spend a lot of digital ink talking about the direction of the New Jersey Republican Party. I've had some opinions on it over the years.
Absolutely.
But to say that there's no difference between the parties in 2022, case in point, I think most people here this weekend would agree that we can define what a woman is.
Right.
Right now, we've got the nominee of the other party for the Supreme Court of the United States that cannot tell you what the definition of a woman is. If that's not a difference, a bold color as opposed to a pale pastel,
I don't know
then
what
I
it
don't
is.
know. I don't know what is.
And I think it's horrifying that we have somebody who appears as if it's pretty certain she's going to be a Supreme Court justice, the United States Supreme Court. She will not define a woman. She will not say what a woman is. She says, well, I'm not a biologist.
It's that, and I think that, to me, is when we talk about being able to recapture, that suburban family that may have swung. Maybe they weren't Trump supporters. Maybe they kind of swung left a little bit. That comes back and say, this current party, the Democratic Party, has gone so far to the left that you're now undercutting. We've seen articles about this, undercutting feminism, and that movement, which has. I think you put something out recently about, is feminism now dead?
It's a valid question.
We can't even define a woman now. Now we're going to talk about defining women as people who are a pregnant person. Pregnant person?
Dan
We were just talking
riffed on
about
that
that.
earlier,
We
yeah.
were just talking about
Which,
it.
everybody here married, kids, nothing could be more offensive to my wife than to take away from her everything that goes into pregnancy, which if you've never seen a woman, I'm not talking about the birth, I'm talking about the entire shebang, folks. That is one of the most challenging things a human being can go through.
Right.
It's something that makes women unique.
Of
And to
course.
degrade that, I think
Well,
it's
they
something
would
that's
say,
going to
Matt,
backfire. I really do.
Matt, they would say to your wife, well, honey, we don't want to take this away from you. We just want you to share it a little bit with some other people, okay? But here's a really frightening thing, and it's not too far off. It may be happening already, that your son or daughter, a child, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, or
Right.
even younger, they get the notion that he wants to be a she or she wants to be a he, and start to move in that direction. And you will have nothing to say about it. You won't be able to control it. If you try to intervene, you may get called up by the Division of Youth and Family Services.
Well, I think this is one of the things that Matt's touching on, this notion that we can disagree on some of these issues. But the left has gone so far to the left now, and the thing that I know we all agree here is particularly disturbing, they won't leave kids out of it.
Right.
If you want to come to a political event as adults and argue about transgenderism, knock yourself out. But they want to dictate to our children what reality is. They want to mold our children to fit their worldview, and they don't want Matt Mensch, Matt Rooney, Dan Cerrucci to be able to have a say in how our kids are educated, which that's why we're going to be watching your town and Somerset County in particular in 2022, because I think that's one of those places that, as you say, even though I voted for the Donald, I know Somerset County did not love the Donald. I think they're going red this year.
I think they are too, and it's these bigger pictures, not necessarily transgender itself, but the policies, the COVID policies that Murphy had in place, impacted families. They impacted working mothers who couldn't go to school to work because they're now trying to work at home and homeschool their kids.
Yes.
And families saw the impact of these policies on them, whether it's their jobs, their kids, their whole social family interactions were disrupted by these COVID policies. Now, now with some of these questions about vaccinations and forcing kids to get vaccinated. I mean, I can't take my kids on a cruise in 3 years because you got to be 12. You have to be vaccinated at 12 and up. I can't take my kids to. I have Broadway tickets. Can't go to Broadway because I'm not going to vaccinate my kids at young age. I don't know what we'll do when they're older.
Right.
But
the point is, it should be your decision.
Right. And
you
so,
talked about kitchen table issues.
Right.
All of this stuff we're talking about, this is something that should be hashed out among families at the table, not in Trenton.
Right. And the party that we have now is the opportunity to say we're once again the party of the family. We want to support families who make decisions for themselves. Does a woman want to stay home with the kids, or she want to go to work? If she wants to go to work, then there's an opportunity for her to do that. And the kids are in school, but they should be taught by the families on some of these issues that are sensitive, not by a continually progressive agenda at a young age.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to
Well, Jack Chitterelli said during the debate that these were the types of things that should be talked about around the kitchen table. And Murphy made fun of him and smirked and dismissed him.
It actually reminds me a little bit of Mitt Romney, who I'm not the world's biggest Mitt Romney fan, but you got to say Mitt was right about Russia. And he was mocked in 2012.
Totally.
And you can count on one hand the amount of people that have now expressed regret for mocking him. I mean, whether Jack should have been more forceful, that's something I'm sure that's going to be talked about this weekend. But I think the people are now ready for the message.
And I think that's what we as Republican Party need to bring. Yes, we want to lower taxes. We want to do the things that we continue to talk about doing. But more importantly, we want to support the family. And that includes all those things. Making sure you can get a job. Making sure your business can thrive. Making sure your family is protected from these policies that many people really believe harm kids. And I know people in my town who I deal with who are first-time Republican voters because of the Murphy Democratic state policies. That these are, whether they'll stay Republicans, I don't know. But there is an opportunity for us.
Motivated post-election?
Motivated during the gubernatorial election last
okay.
year, and we'll see if that continues.
Right.
Which
I think there's some of the folks, not to interrupt you again, but I think those are some of the folks that didn't get picked up by the pollsters.
Right. Oh, sure. People that you would have thought their record is diehard Democratic voters, but they swung back this way because the anti-Trumpism was gone. There's someone in particular I'm thinking about who was a super anti-Trump person, but over the past couple of years even saw our Board of Ed continue to go further to the left and saw policies being pushed by county candidates and local candidates further to the left and said, I was a Democrat 10 years ago, I was a Democrat 15 years ago, but that's not this party, let alone a Democratic Party for the 1990s. I mean, you look at Bill Clinton give a speech for the 1990s, I think I would vote for Bill Clinton in 1990.
The era of big government is over, remember that?
That's what he said.
That was in our lifetime.
I think he said it in his State of the Union speech.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Now, of course, he got his rear end handed to him by Newt Gingrich first, but
sure.
still, he still said it.
But I mean, when you look at those speeches from the 1992, 1991 time frame,
He signed off on welfare reform, too.
It's amazing. It's amazing how the party has shifted. And so we have an opportunity to capture those voters. And I just think that we need to do what you mentioned Senator Durst said. We have to listen. We have to go there, not telling them, like every other, I'm from the government, I'm here to help, and let me tell you what you need.
Right.
That's never going to win. That's never going to be a message that's compelling. And getting that feedback, making sure people are heard, and then making sure we as a party have the debates in these rooms and the hallways where we talk about what candidates did good things, what candidates did things we don't like, where their positions are. But come out of June, united behind whatever those candidates are, and go win. And also, as a corollary to that, stop harboring the you're with us or against us mentality, or the, oh, well, since you did run in a primary, now we're going to spend resources punishing you.
Right.
Rather than bringing you back into the fold and saying, look, why did you feel compelled to run?
And I have to say this for people that don't know you. You're saying this as a guy who came to office by winning a primary, a tough primary where they threw the kitchen sink at you. And I know you personally for many years. You're a very, very conservative person.
Absolutely.
So you're not anti-primary. You're not saying we shouldn't have principles. You're just saying that there is a larger fight out there, and we're going to need everybody.
And that's it. And that's
Yes.
it. And we don't. I don't believe we sacrifice our principles by rallying around the Republican candidate in November.
Yeah.
We
right.
exercise our whatever our belief is. If you want to vote for the most conservative candidate out there, then God bless you, go do it.
Right.
In the primary. But if that candidate doesn't win, I hope they do. But in most instances, I hope that that's the candidate that
Right.
wins. That's usually the candidate that reflects my feelings.
Okay.
But if they don't, then still come together and go out and win against Democrats, who
Absolutely.
are always 98% of the time always going to be worse than whoever candidate we have.
Once the
Certainly
primary
the
is over, let it go.
Right.
Let it go.
And bring in people to the fold. If they were on the outside, why are they outside? Is it a social issue? They don't agree with these issues?
Right.
Or how do we also, as conservatives, make sure that the establishment, whatever you want to call it, the more moderate wing of the party recognizes that they need to consider some of our concerns as well. And how do we work with them to say, these are the kind of candidates you have to pick that are going to stand for conservative values. And by the way, that's what I think the formula is. If you want to be a conservative, win in New Jersey, I don't believe you can run as far to the middle as possible and win. Because if you're a voter and you're choosing a real Democrat or a Democrat light, you may as well go with the real thing and just go vote for a Democrat.
A genuine article.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but you can be a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-family candidate without being as controversial as you could do it in a way that's not just trying to be controversial. And I think Christie did that in some respects, where he was pro-life.
Yes, he did.
But he didn't go out there and make that this cornerstone of his campaign.
No, but he didn't run away from
He
it
didn't
either.
run away from it either.
He never ran away
So-
from it.
Well, what he said was, and I remember at the time, this is my personal experience with becoming a father and a parent. This is what I believe, and I hope you'll respect it. I'm going to talk to you about what I believe. I don't listen to what you believe. And I think that when you talk about it in a way that makes people believe you've actually given thought to it, they're more willing to listen to you, as opposed to just repeating the same lines over and over again. And I've even said this before, and I say this as I'm a Roman Catholic. I have a very strong faith in God and that babies are a miracle. I don't know how you can be a parent and not believe that. But I tell Republicans all the time, stop using that word sanctity of life all the time reflexively. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of people in this country in 2022 that are not religious.
Right.
So I'm not saying you shouldn't share your faith with them, but to get people in the door, you have to look for that common thread that unites all people. And it's this whole idea that government shouldn't be arbitrarily treating life differently based upon political considerations. That's something that most people agree.
Right.
For in other words, somebody should not be less valued because they're handicapped, or we find out they're going to believe that they're going to be born handicapped, right? Because we find that out during the pregnancy. That's a way to begin that conversation, So I mean, that's what I appreciate about you, Mayor. You're a thoughtful guy, and you understand that it's not about abandoning our principles. It's about finding better ways to reach people, and that's part of what is trying to be accomplished this weekend in Atlantic City.
We, when I became mayor, I was during a campaign. I was endorsed by New Jersey Right to Life, and when I became mayor, it was 2 weeks in the door.
Yeah.
And in the past, as a councilman, I had occasionally done stuff in January, kind of with the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. I would make a statement, and the year before, probably because I was running, it became much more controversial. It became a big thing. I wasn't sure what I should do 2 weeks into being mayor. I was trying to figure out, do I want to go out and make a statement 2 weeks in?
2 weeks in, let's have an abortion debate.
Right. But I didn't want to kind of give in either. I didn't want to feel like the cyber bullies were going to, silence me.
Right.
And I was at an installation dinner for the fire department, and the Monsignor was there for my church. And so I went to the Monsignor and I said, it's not my problem. I said, I don't want to back off of being a good, anti-abortion, Republican. But I don't want to have my first 2 weeks completely derailed because I decided to pick on one of the most controversial social issues that I could do 2 weeks in his mayor on a topic that I don't really have a direct control over it. And so the Monsignor told me, he goes, Matt, you don't need to be anti-abortion. You need to be pro-life. So if you want to be a good pro-life mayor, you need to be pro-life. It's always better to be for something than against something.
Yes.
So talk about your support of women. Go out at Mother's Day, do things and support organizations that are pro-women, that are pro-family, that are pro-child. And those are the opportunities to be truly pro-life, as opposed to just making a statement for the sole purpose of, ginning up all the opposition that's going to spend 2 weeks explaining why you felt the need to comment on this
And
issue.
states like New Jersey don't make it easy to be a parent.
Right. And that's how we've tried to do it at Bridgewater, is taking that approach and finding those ways of being able to be conservative, be pro-life, without derailing all the other things that we were elected to do, because we decided we want to pick on the most controversial issue and just be in your face about it constantly. And I think that's what we as conservatives find candidates. We need to find the candidates that can balance hey, if I'm electing you to the assembly, I want a candidate who's going to be pro-life, who's going to vote for those things. But I also want a candidate who's going to, make sure that I'm being supported in suburban communities with our school funding, that's going to be able to, respond to constituents. So it's got to be a whole package. It can't be one issue. And we have to have that whole message. If we do, I think we win. That's my feeling.
Not complicated, not easy,
No.
but not complicated. Mayor Matt Mensch,
Hey, thank you so much.
always a pleasure
having us
hanging
on.
with you.
Really appreciate it. Gentlemen, enjoy the rest of the conference.
We'll see you at the bar, hopefully at some point.
Absolutely.
I wish it was a little bit closer to the table, but I think they did that on purpose.
Suzanne
They
made it.
didn't let us too close to it. Well, I mean, what more could you want out of our first three guests?
This was great fun.
It's great.
Great fun.
Now, of course,
Well,
I've completely lost touch of where we even are in our schedule. I do this
don't
every
know,
year.
But I know I got to get a cup of coffee.
Get a cup of coffee. Why don't we take a break?
Okay.
And let's see, it's 11:15. It's 11:10. 4:10. It's 4:10. We'll come back in a little bit, and I think we'll talk to some of our legislators. Sound like a plan? All right, folks. You know where to find us here at the Save Jersey Facebook page, over on Twitter or the YouTube. See, how do we do this thing? Up here we go.
Here's
End
little
stream.
Charlie Cerrucci.
If it wasn't for Alex, how would we do this? Oh, there's like a countdown. Check that out. Alex, I didn't use any of the sound effects at all.
That's to your district.
Okay, I'll be right back.
See? I didn't even use that at all, Dan.
Who's coming up next?
So there's a pause right there, a lot of practice. You do get more comfortable. Trying something new.